Chapter 3429. BQG6. CC BQG6. CC clap. Ling Han stretched out his right hand and caught the man's fist. Under the powerful impact, he didn't move at all. He looked at the seventh prince and said, "So, the demonic beast outside Hidden Tiger City that was adept at mental energy was yours, and it was also you who raised it. In order to conceal this, you launched a beast tide and slaughtered Hidden Tiger City." The 5 men and women's expressions changed drastically. The seventh prince, however, was calm and unhurried. He said, "You're right. It was indeed me. Die." The man punched again. Ling Han stretched out his other hand and caught the man's left fist. He nodded and said, "No wonder your spiritual power is so strong. It must have something to do with those spiritual-type demonic beasts." Ha 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 ha. The seventh prince laughed. "That's right. I relied on those demonic beasts to increase my spiritual power." "You're really crazy," Ling Han scolded. "They're just some fools. To be able to contribute to my ambition is to fulfill their value in life." The seventh prince said, "It's also you who made me decide to massacre the city. Thus, I collected enough blood divine crystals to push my telekinesis to the great accomplishment stage. So, you can't escape responsibility." Ling Han sneered. "You're willing to sacrifice everyone in the world to satisfy your own selfish desires. Why look for a scapegoat?" He knew that the seventh prince was ambitious, but he never expected him to be so crazy. In order to destroy the evidence, he launched a beast tide to massacre the city and used this opportunity to produce more blood divine crystals. Why could the seventh prince launch a beast tide? It was simple. Spiritual-type demonic beasts could control other demonic beasts. As long as there were enough of them, they would naturally form a beast tide. With a loud roar, peng, he threw the burly man away, causing him to crash heavily against the palace wall. The man spat out blood. This attack was not light, and he was seriously injured. Ling Han, if you had been obedient and submitted to me, how good would that have been?" The seventh prince coldly said. He didn't even spare the burly man a glance. "However, now that I think about it, you're unwilling to submit to others, and your talent in martial art is so terrifying. Sooner or later, you'll rebel. My mistake was that I shouldn't have had any expectations of you." Xiao, a flowery figure flashed past, charging toward Ling Han. It was the only woman in the 6-man squad. She appeared to be about 30 years of age and was as beautiful as a peach. With a tender shout, she thrust her sword forward. Then, with a shake of her sword, clang, the sword opened up like an umbrella and turned into dozens of thin swords that flew toward Ling Han. Two-veined Ling Han could clearly see that there were patterns on this woman's heart and liver. It was obvious that she had cultivated to the second stage of the engravement realm. He let out a long roar and threw a punch that was surrounded by golden energy. At the same time, he used his most powerful punch, which was a 50-fold attack toward the woman. Peng! The umbrella sword was the first to bear the brunt of the attack and was immediately shattered. However, the power of the punch did not dissipate, and it continued on toward the woman. The woman was sent flying, drawing an arc in the air, and fell heavily to the ground. The woman struggled to get up, but just as she stood up, she sat back down. Her face became completely red, as if blood was about to seep out. The seventh prince's expression was as dark as water. 2 of his subordinates in the engravement realm were not even a match for Ling Han, which made him lose face. However, even though the environment was rapidly recovering, it was still too short. He did not have enough resources to create an existence in the enlightening realm, except for himself. Could it be that he had to go personally? Then why did he have so many subordinates? Were they just spectators, cheering and applauding? But if he didn't go, how could he kill Ling Han? Moreover, there were so many treasured fruits here. "Your Highness, I'll do it." An old man walked out. His hair had all turned white, but his face was extremely red. "All right, I'll trouble Elder Ge to do it." The seventh prince nodded, showing great respect to this old man. This old man was called Lu Ge, and he was already over 200 years old. Before the first great change of the world, Lu Ge was already a boxing master. He was already over 100 years old, but he was still able to fight against two young and strong men at the same time. After the great change, he welcomed his second spring. With the help of the treasured fruits, he successfully stood at the forefront of martial art. Because of his exquisite boxing skills, it was not difficult for him to defeat someone stronger than him. The seventh prince had also paid a great price to take him in as a subordinate. He was usually very respectful and called him Elder Ge. A few years ago, Lu Ge had finally entered the engravement realm, and with the seventh prince's full support, he had also rushed to the peak of 5 vein. With his attainments in boxing skills, it was enough for him to sweep through the engravement realm. Lu Ge should be able to do it. Even if they fought at the same level, with his exquisite boxing skills, he would not be defeated too quickly. In that case, as long as he could force out Ling Han's absolute fairness, then he would be able to easily deal with this disobedient fellow. Lu Ge smiled proudly and walked towards Ling Han. Step by step, he was like a lion. He was clearly very old, but his body was emitting a shocking amount of blood qi, like a beacon that soared into the sky. Posturing. Ling Han snorted. However, there was a price to pay for putting on an act in front of him. He was already holding the heavenly rune jade in his hand, and was currently infusing it with his mental energy. This would only take a short 10 seconds. Lu Ge intentionally did not move quickly. Instead, he slowly walked towards Ling Han. Every time his footsteps landed, there would be a heavy sound, as if they were knocking on his chest, creating an enormous pressure. This was what he liked, destroying his opponent from the heart to the body. 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 seconds. Enough. Ling Han smiled slightly and raised his right hand. Sure, the heavenly rune jade was already tossed out. Under the control of his mental energy, it instantly increased from 6 times the speed of sound to 7 times, 8 times, 9 times. It was as fast as lightning. Lu Ge was instantly horrified. An ultimate bone realm martial artist could actually launch an attack at 9 times the speed of sound. How could he dodge this? If he had known that Ling Han had this move, he would have stared at Ling Han's hand. As soon as it moved, he would immediately dodge. There was a process for throwing out the heavenly rune jade, and it would be enough for him to dodge it. But when the heavenly rune jade was tossed out, the two of them were only 15 feet apart. How could he dodge? He forcefully threw out a punch to meet the heavenly rune jade. It had to be said that this old fist master was indeed extraordinary. His intuition was very accurate, and in the face of death, he also exploded with great potential. He actually managed to throw out a punch in time, and it even met the heavenly rune jade. The old man immediately revealed a look of joy. When he was young, he was known as the Iron Fist. After truly embarking on the path of martial art, he had also invested a lot of energy into body tempering. He even learned a spirit map that could communicate with high-level energy, and his fist force was invincible. So what if it was 9 times the speed of sound? Under his iron fist, it could only be crushed. Bang! The heavenly rune jade smashed into him. End of chapter. Phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 3430. A Beautiful Romance. BQG 6. CC. After the heavenly pattern jade hit its target, there was no more after. Lu Ge's fist shattered, then his forearm, and then his entire arm. The heavenly pattern jade was unstoppable, and it smashed into Lu Ge's neck. Instantly, his head turned into a rain of blood. The destructive power of a blunt weapon that weighed thousands of kilograms shot out at 9 times the speed of sound was indescribably terrifying. Bang! Lu Ge fell to the ground, already a headless corpse. The skin on his upper body was completely torn apart by the terrifying force. His flesh was a bloody mess, and it was a horrible sight to behold. Everyone was dumbfounded and completely lost their ability to react. This attack killed a 5-vein cultivator in an instant. What kind of concept was this? With this kind of power, even an enlightening realm cultivator would have a high chance of being killed if they faced it head-on. The seventh prince's pupils shrank rapidly, almost turning into a dot. He said in a low voice, "Spiritual energy ritual implement." As expected of the seventh prince, he had good eyesight. Ling Han nodded and said, "Not bad." As they spoke, sixth baby had already returned with the heavenly pattern stone. The seventh prince stared at the jade for a while and said, "This is a heavenly pattern jade, right?" Ling Han nodded again. "Very good. With the strength of my telekinesis, coupled with this spiritual energy ritual implement, it is not impossible to kill even in the mystery realm." The seventh prince nodded, and a greedy expression appeared on his face. A 2-star material for a ritual implement, even he could not help but be tempted. Ling Han smiled, and said, "You're thinking too much. Do you really think that with absolute fairness, I can't do anything to you?" The seventh prince said leisurely. Ling Han did not dare to be careless, because the seventh prince was also proficient in spiritual energy, and it was very likely that his was above his. After all, the seventh prince had sacrificed a city to forcibly push his telekinesis to the Great Success realm. Of course, the Great Success he was talking about was definitely below the immortal path. "Go." The seventh prince raised his finger lightly, and with a swoosh, a cold light flashed, and a bright sharp sword shot towards Ling Han. The tip of the sword was still wrapped with golden energy. 7 times the speed of sound. Ling Han's heart skipped a beat. The seventh prince's attack didn't seem to be as fast as his heavenly rune jade, but the seventh prince didn't use any secret force or physical strength. It was purely a telekinesis attack. If he were to use telekinesis to control the weapon, he would only be able to use telekinesis and strength 5 times faster than the speed of sound. The speed would not be calculated as 1 + 1. Instead, it would be much worse. Even so, if the seventh prince first threw the sword and then pushed it with his mind power, he could reach several times the speed of sound. Breaking 10 times was a given. If the flying sword were to attack him at 10 times the speed of sound, would he be able to dodge it? Ling Han moved his body and dodged the sword. He shook his head in his heart. If it was 10 times the speed of sound, then with the distance between the two of them, there was no way he could dodge it. Then what do we do? Although the seventh prince didn't have a heavenly pattern jade, the destructive power of the flying sword was still terrifying. His trump card was actually the other party's strong point. Ling Han searched for a countermeasure in his heart. He instantly had a preliminary idea. Since he could use telekinesis to speed up, why couldn't he slow down? The seventh prince sneered. With a wave of his hand, another flying sword flew toward Ling Han. Ling Han didn't dodge. Instead, when the flying sword was within 15 feet of him, he wrapped it with his mind power to slow it down. The flying sword weighed about 6 kilograms, but it was 7 times faster than the speed of sound, so the force of impact was extremely shocking. Fortunately, his mental power was formless and would not be injured by sharp weapons. Otherwise, he would definitely be heavily injured if he were to wrap around it. However, under the constant obstruction of his mind power, the flying sword finally slowed down. By the time it reached Ling Han, it was only 3 times the speed of sound. He reached out again and caught the flying sword. "Here you go." Ling Han threw the flying sword and accelerated it with his mind power. Whoosh, it reached 8 times the speed of sound. The seventh prince punched the air, and the flying sword suddenly fell from the sky. This wasn't because of the power of his punch, but because he also used his mind power to slow down the flying sword, and then combined it with the power of the enlightening state to shake the flying sword down. "Without absolute fairness, how can you be a match for me?" the seventh prince said proudly. This time, he raised his hand and threw it. Whoosh, the flying sword turned into a stream of light, its blade blazing. This wasn't because it was wrapped with high-level energy, but because the flying sword's speed exceeded 10 times the speed of sound. The intense friction with the air had heated the blade red. 11 or even 12 times the speed of sound was impossible to dodge. Ling Han could only use his mind power to form a heavy net to block it. The flying sword's speed finally dropped to 7 times the speed of sound, but it was still astonishingly fast. But Ling Han had already swung his fist, wrapped with stone energy, to strengthen his defense. Bang! His fist landed on the sword, and the flying sword was instantly sent flying. This was not a heavenly pattern jade, and it only weighed 3 kilograms. Otherwise, if it had been struck at 7 times the speed of sound, it was guaranteed that even Ling Han's bones would have been broken instantly. Even if it was wrapped in the power of stone, it would be useless. Even so, blood still dripped from his fist. The seventh prince had wrapped a high-level energy around the flying sword, greatly increasing its destructive power. Ling Han looked at his hand. Fortunately, the bones weren't broken. The seventh prince was a little surprised. He didn't expect that the attack would be so easily resolved by Ling Han. I used the blood divine crystal to push my mind power to the greater mastery level, but you're actually only a little weaker than me. How did you cultivate? Of course, this was because Ling Han had the spirit-nourishing gourd. Every night, he slept in it, and his mind power would gradually improve. Of course, Ling Han paid a lot of attention to training, be it alchemy or setting up formations. They were all ways to train his mind power. Ling Han smiled faintly. So what if you've sacrificed so many innocent people? You're only burdened with a body full of sins. So what? The seventh prince sneered. For the sake of my ambition, what can't I sacrifice? As long as I inherit the throne, I'll definitely do better than my father. He was brimming with confidence because Chen Fengyang spent at least 10 months in seclusion in a year. He only spent 2 months on politics, yet he was able to bring peace and prosperity to Xianbei country. With him as the emperor of Meiji, the country would naturally be even more prosperous. Ling Han shook his head. I thought you were an ambitious and ruthless person, but now I see that you're just a selfish villain. Impudent. The seventh prince snorted and waved his hand. Swoosh, another sword flew over. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. He shot out 13 flying swords in one go. This was incomparably terrifying. Each flying sword had 11 or 12 times the speed of sound. Although there was a difference in speed, it was pitifully small. Ling Han expanded his mind power and wrapped it around the flying swords once again. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The flying swords seemed to have fallen into a swamp, and their speed instantly slowed down. One by one, they were sent flying by Ling Han. However, Ling Han's fists were also dripping with blood. End of chapter. Phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 34-32. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han left the palace and did not go to other places. Anyway, the milk babies had already searched, and second baby had even used his eye sorcery, so there was definitely nothing good to be found. In fact, his harvest was not small. An earth spirit fruit, which was used by the ancients as a sacrifice, was definitely valuable. There were also 2 ritual implements and a heavenly pattern jade. Any one of them could crush the current martial art of this era. If he was still discontented, he would be struck by lightning from the heavens. The reason why Ling Han felt that it was not enough was because his cultivation did not improve much this time. It made him sigh. It was not like before, when entering a historical site would always make some changes to his cultivation level. As time passed, more people entered this place. Even if many people could not find treasures, they still lingered here, because if they cultivated here, they would get twice the result with half the effort. Ling Han absorbed purple qi here again. The amount was still small, but the quality was extremely high. He asked the milk babies what this purple qi was. Father, have you not heard of purple qi from the east? Second baby said. The power of heaven and earth is divided into levels. Purple qi is an energy that only existences above the path of immortality can refine. Usually, it only exists in certain specific areas of the mountains and rivers. Father is only in the extreme bone realm. If he can absorb a trace of purple qi, it will naturally help his cultivation. Fourth baby nodded. The reason why the innate divine body cultivates so quickly and is so powerful is that it can absorb purple qi from birth, fifth baby said. So that's how it is. Ling Han suddenly understood. He could not help but be envious. It would be great if he could also become a divine body. Father clearly does not have a divine body, but he can absorb purple qi. This is very strange, eldest baby said. Yes, if you don't jump through the immortal gate, then you are not fated with the path of immortality. Logically, it is impossible to absorb purple qi. Seventh baby agreed, but as soon as she finished speaking, her eyes began to dry up again, and she fell asleep with a thud. Is father also a divine body? Sixth baby asked curiously. Let me take a look. Second baby used his eye sorcery and looked at Ling Han. Ling Han quickly covered a certain part of his body. Second baby's eye sorcery had the effect of seeing through things. Strange. After looking at it for a while, second baby's little face revealed a look of surprise. Dad's body looks no different from an ordinary person's, but there's a big difference. Speak human language. Elder baby glared at him. Second baby tilted his head and seemed to be thinking about how to phrase his words. After a while, he said, Dad, everything is normal, but when it comes to the level of cells, I can't see through it. Hey! The other 5 children cried out in surprise. Only the 7th child was sound asleep. What's the situation? Second bro, didn't you claim to be able to see through everything? Why can't you see through cells at this level? Second baby spread its hands. That's true. It seems that there is another world hidden inside. Ling Han was shocked. Second baby was right. There were worlds hidden in his cells. They were nurtured by him personally, and now they contained countless living creatures. That's what makes him so special. In fact, the reason why he could advance to the 7th transformation was because the planes in his cells worked together to form a certain special transformation. Now, it was also the cells in his body that allowed him to absorb the purple aura in advance and possess the same ability as the innate divine constitution. To be able to be our dad, he must not be an ordinary person. Third baby concluded proudly. Yes. The 6 Calabash brothers nodded at the same time. Suddenly, 7th baby woke up. Ling Han smiled. He carried the fat pig in his hand and arrived at the edge of the cliff. The wooden bridge was right in front of him. Although he had walked through it once and there were many people walking over from the opposite side, Ling Han still felt uneasy. However, there was only one way to leave, so he could only take it. Ling Han walked onto the wooden bridge and walked quickly. Not only was the wooden bridge dangerous, but there seemed to be some terrifying existence at the bottom. He did not want to stay in such a dangerous place any longer. Now, he was the only one walking back. He had brought 6 tender milk babies with him, and he was even carrying a pig. His ostentatious manner naturally surprised everyone along the way. Fortunately, everyone's attention was on the opposite side. No one attacked Ling Han, which saved him some trouble. Perhaps others were also afraid that it would be too dangerous to fight here. After all, it was a wooden bridge. A slight bump could break it, and everyone would fall to pieces. Soon, Ling Han had crossed half the distance. Bang! A gust of air rose up from below and hit the wooden bridge. Suddenly, the entire wooden bridge swayed like a snake. What was going on? The people on the bridge were shocked and involuntarily reached out to grab the handrails. Bang, bang, bang. The air gushed out one after another and hit the wooden bridge frequently, causing it to sway violently. It could collapse at any time. Looking at the surrounding clouds and mist, it was as if they had encountered some kind of sky-devouring monster and were being sucked back in continuously. Second baby looked out and couldn't help but shout, "Father, run quickly, an old demon is about to rush out." Hiss, there were not many people who could be called an old monster by second baby. Without saying a word, Ling Han directly put the 7 milk babies and the perverted pig into the spirit-nourishing gourd. Then, he used his movement technique and ran to the other side of the bridge. However, the bridge was in chaos. Some people looked down, some continued forward, and some turned back. Many sections of the bridge were congested. Ling Han did not have time to waste. He immediately jumped up and stepped over the heads of others. F***CK, bastard. Don't run. See if I don't kill you. The people who were stepped on were all angry. Those who were originally planning to run back sped up, while those who were moving forward changed direction and chased after Ling Han. People who practiced martial arts were generally hot-tempered. How could they tolerate having their heads stepped on? As Ling Han galloped away, more and more people joined the ranks of the chase. However, Ling Han's speed was really too fast. He had even used wind and cloud flutter, reaching 4 times the speed of sound, and the sound waves that he created were incredibly violent. Thankfully, his figure was very high. Otherwise, if he had been sprinting madly on the surface of the bridge, perhaps half of the people here would have been sent flying off the bridge by him. The end was already in sight. However, at this moment, There was a loud roar coming from the bottomless abyss under the bridge, and there was also the sound of ghosts crying. Everyone was shocked. There was a terrible pressure in the sound of ghosts crying. It was definitely from an extremely terrifying person. Boom! A figure flew out from the abyss, causing the clouds and mist to roll. Its speed was more than 10 times the speed of sound. It was almost impossible to be seen with the naked eye. With a bang, it rushed up. This figure was very domineering. It actually crashed into the wooden bridge. With a bang, the place where it was hit was immediately shattered. Then, from this point of impact, the wooden bridge began to collapse to both sides. Suddenly, everyone began to run for their lives. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 34-33. A Good Romance. BQG 6. See for a moment, no one was in the mood to see who the figure that shot into the sky was. It was more important to escape. The wooden bridge was collapsing, and everyone was running for their lives in 2 different directions. However, many people couldn't run faster than the wooden bridge. They screamed and fell into the abyss with the broken pieces of the wooden bridge. Gar 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 in the sky, the figure that broke the wooden bridge let out a strange laugh, as if it was enjoying the scene. Ling Han increased his speed. Now everyone was running back, but no one was faster than him. He still jumped over everyone's head, and after a few leaps, he finally crossed the wooden bridge. This time, he finally felt a little more relaxed. He looked up into the sky and saw a figure floating there. There were 2 pairs of wings on his back that were flapping. This person's body was covered in feathers, and his feet were a pair of strong human claws. His face was also very bird-like, with a high protruding beak, and his eyes were terrifyingly sharp. Birdman, another birdman. However, this birdman was much more terrifying. Even though he was so far away, Ling Han still felt a strong sense of oppression. This was a suppression on the level of life. No one knew when second baby had climbed out. She took a look and said, "This guy is on the celestial path, but he is only standing on the first step." On the celestial path, Ling Han's heart trembled, and he said, "What level is that?" Second baby shook his head, "My memory is also very vague, I can't remember." In any case, this birdman was extremely terrifying. Currently, only 2 people were on the celestial path, the Demon Emperor and Chen Fengyang. Without these 2, no one could suppress this birdman. Hiss, this birdman had been hibernating in the underground palace, and only came out when the underground palace appeared. Or was he trapped here, and because of some suppression or array, he finally escaped? Ling Han thought of the rat demon in a certain cave. That guy was also trapped here, and who knew how many years it took to finally escape? The rat demon was definitely on the celestial path, but he was killed by Chen Fengyang with 1 blow. From this point, this birdman shouldn't be a match for Chen Fengyang. But how could Chen Fengyang be so coincidental as to suddenly appear here? "It's time to retreat," Ling Han murmured. He grabbed second baby and ran. "Gar gar gar, I've been trapped for so long, so I can use you guys as a sumptuous meal." In the sky, the birdman flapped his wings and glanced around. He decided not to go to the cliff. There was no way out, so there was no need to rush. He swooped over, but the wooden bridge was not completely broken. The people on the bridge fell, but he opened his mouth and sucked them into his mouth. He was only 2 or 3 times taller than an ordinary person, but the people he sucked into his mouth would automatically shrink, and he could swallow them in 1 bite. Thus, he swallowed as he flew. By the time he reached the other side of the bridge, at least a few dozen people had been swallowed alive. Everyone was frightened out of their wits. This birdman actually ate humans raw, and its strength was incomparably tyrannical. Any attacks that landed on it were like tickles. It didn't care at all and directly swallowed it whole. None of them had the courage to fight, and all of them fled. The birdman burped, then licked his lips. "Don't be afraid, I'm already full. I won't eat you guys for now. Gar gar gar, I'll keep you in captivity for now. I'll eat you when I'm hungry." He swooped out and began to catch people. Suddenly, people were thrown off their feet, and it was a mess. Everyone was running. At this time, they didn't need to run the fastest. As long as they were faster than most people, Enough people behind them would be caught by the birdman. The birdman changed his mind, and with a swoosh, he flew into the sky. When he landed again, he had already appeared at the entrance of the underground palace. This way, he would close the door and beat the dog. No one would be able to escape. When Ling Han saw the birdman rise into the sky, he knew that this guy had the idea of catching them all in one fell swoop. He hurriedly left the crowd, scuttled into the bushes, and directly entered the spirit-nourishing gourd. This was a gourd. If it was placed in the bushes, it would be very hidden. He decided to slow down. That birdman couldn't guard it forever. "Father, I'll go out and scout the situation," said the invisible sixth baby. Ling Han nodded. Sixth baby was still trustworthy. "Be careful, don't get too close to that birdman." "Yes." Sixth baby nodded. Although she was born magical, she was still young. Her battle prowess could only rival those in the engravement realm. She was definitely no match for experts in the celestial path realm. Ling Han waited in the gourd. Fortunately, there was no shortage of food and drink. However, the milk babies were all big eaters. Even the perverted pig could eat a lot, but it could only last for a few days. After half a day, sixth baby returned and explained the current situation. The birdman guarded the door. Whether it was those who escaped from inside or those who wanted to enter from outside, they were all captured by him. Under threats and promises, they had already become the birdman's subordinates. In turn, they helped him search for other humans. After another day, the birdman announced that he had officially become the master of this underground palace. He called himself King Ao Tien. This was Ao Tien Palace. All the people in the underground palace had to bow down to Ao Tien Palace. Those who refused to submit would be killed. Among those who were captured, some were soft and surrendered immediately. There were also those with hard bones who were swallowed by the birdman. Such a cruel scene frightened the remaining people who were still wavering, and they all surrendered. The birdman even said that he would organize an army to attack the imperial capital and become the overlord of Black North Country. He would replace Chen Fengyang. According to sixth baby, even the seventh prince had surrendered. This was easy to understand. The seventh prince was an ambitious person, not a martyr. Of course, he knew that a man should know when to yield and when to stand tall. However, even the seventh prince had shamelessly surrendered. This naturally brought about a very bad influence. The news was deliberately spread by the birdman to build momentum for Ao Tien Palace. Ling Han did not know how big of an impact this news would have on the imperial capital. However, he believed that the seventh prince would probably not be able to inherit the throne. Chen Fengyang was a proud person. How could he let a coward sit on the throne? He waited for a few more days. Then, he came out of the gourd and swaggered out of the palace. Now that everyone in the palace had become the birdman's subordinates, they were naturally on his side. Moreover, it had only been a few days. Who could possibly know everyone in the palace? Thus, as Ling Han walked past, not a single person actually became suspicious of him. Until he came to the exit of the underground palace. Although many people had surrendered, how many of them were sincere in their allegiance? Thus, this passageway that one had to pass through was guarded by the birdman's loyal lackeys. Ling Han glanced over and realized that he did not recognize those people. However, it did not mean that they did not recognize him. After all, he was now a famous person. Ling Han thought about it and decided to enter the gourd and let sixth baby bring it out. Thus, a green gourd began to roll on the ground, as if it was being pushed by the wind. Reading on a mobile phone was more refreshing. Chapter 34-34. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC Hey, why is there a gourd? The guards had noticed the vitality cultivating gourd. There are many plants in the palace. It's normal for a gourd to grow here, someone said casually. Hee, maybe it's a treasure, someone else said, but he himself laughed. It was clear that he was only joking. Maybe it really is. A man in grey walked over and reached out to pick up the gourd. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, and he had already appeared outside. He threw a punch at that person. Peng, that person was only at the ultimate bone tier. How could he possibly be a match for Ling Han? Fortunately, Ling Han did not have any killing intent and only sent him flying. Otherwise, with Ling Han's tyrannical strength, this punch would have definitely killed him. The man fell heavily to the ground, while the other guards were tongue-tied. What's going on? Can this person turn invisible? It wasn't until Ling Han started running that they came to a sudden realization and hurriedly sounded the alarm. After a while, the birdman appeared. He asked the guards in a deep voice, and after learning what had happened, he said in surprise, "A gourd is rolling on its own, and a living person appears out of thin air. That should be a spatial magic tool. Moreover, it can accommodate living creatures. Such a treasure can only be nurtured by nature. Although I don't really care about it, letting someone run out of Aotian Palace is an injury to my face. Mph, little brat below the immortal path, where can you run to?" Birdman soared into the sky and chased after Ling Han. As he searched, his eyesight was extremely sharp. He could see through the layers of leaves and see every blade of grass and tree in the forest. However, he was disappointed. After chasing for half an hour, he didn't find anything. He did not think that Ling Han could reach 10 times the speed of sound, so he must be hiding. Damn it! The birdman flew back and gave up the chase. He was just a small character. If he ran away, then so be it. When he conquered the world in the future, this brat would still fall into his palm and become his food. After Ling Han escaped into the forest, the first thing he did was to dig a hole and bury the spirit-nourishing gourd in it. He also entered the hole, and the follow-up work was done by Sixth Baby. When it was completely safe, Sixth Baby would dig out the gourd. Ling Han fled far away. Only when he was thousands of miles away from the underground palace did he heave a sigh of relief and rush towards the imperial capital. A few days later, he returned to the imperial capital. At this moment, the imperial capital was in chaos, and everyone was on tenterhooks. Previously, the heaven and earth had undergone the second upheaval, and new historical sites were appearing everywhere, which also triggered the trend of people searching for opportunities. However, the situation of Aotian Palace was not an isolated case, rather, it was a common occurrence. Immortal path-level beings appeared everywhere, and most of them were extremely ruthless. They either ate, killed, or took in the explorers as servants. Only a few of them were friendly and let them go. It was as if the whole world had changed overnight. So many immortal-level beings had appeared, and they stood at the peak of the martial world, looking down on the world. The mountains all had new masters, and the originally unified Xianbei country was now fragmented. The demon race had not reacted to the situation, and they were probably not in a good state either. Xueqiluo had already rushed back, but Princess Bai Xiao was still in the imperial capital. Many people had fallen this time, including the descendants of the 4 great commanders, senior tutor Hong, Yang Bai, and other important figures. The princes and grandsons had also fallen, and many of them had incurred the wrath of many important figures. They decided to immediately send out their troops, but there were too many historical sites. Which one should they attack? Everyone had their own selfish motives. Of course, they hoped to attack the historical site where their descendants had fallen. However, the 4 great commanders had many descendants, and all of them had fallen in different places. Even they had to consider which descendant to save first. In addition, now that the ancient sites were filled with experts of the immortal path, how could they save them? If the Saint Emperor did not appear, who could match an expert of the immortal path? Everyone was in a dilemma, but the Saint Emperor was still in seclusion, so no one could make a decision. Ling Han had no intention of interfering. In front of an expert of the immortal path, his strength was not enough. Even if he went, it would be a waste of time. Early the next morning, Ling Han began to cultivate as usual, but to his surprise, he found that the power of heaven and earth had become much denser. The upheaval of heaven and earth did not only affect the emergence of many historical sites, but also the environment itself. Cultivating in such an environment would yield twice the results with half the effort. And this might just be the beginning. In the future, the environment would become even more suitable for cultivation. Ling Han pondered. In such an environment, the immortal stalks and mutant trees would naturally grow rapidly and provide a large number of treasured fruits, which would increase the strength of martial artists even more rapidly. A few days later, shocking news spread that the sect master of the Purple Rainbow sect had come to the imperial capital and requested to meet Chen Fengyang. What was the background of this Purple Rainbow sect? In the past, it was an ancient site that had just appeared and was occupied by an expert of the immortal path. Now, he had brought a group of subordinates that he had just subdued to the imperial capital to exchange pointers with Chen Fengyang. Exchanging pointers was fake, but the real reason was to challenge Chen Fengyang for the throne. Ling Han went to investigate and found out that the sect master of the Purple Rainbow sect was called Kui Zhanhai. He did not look like a demonic beast at all, and should be completely human. It was probably because of this that Kui Zhanhai swaggered to the imperial capital. As a fellow human, it was naturally much easier for him to occupy the magpie's nest. The appearance of an expert of the immortal path naturally shocked everyone in the imperial capital. That was an immortal, one that surpassed the realm of humans and could not be fathomed. Although there were rumors that Chen Fengyang had once killed an expert of the immortal path, that was only a rumor. Most people had not seen it with their own eyes. However, Kui Zhanhai was a true expert of the immortal path. Under his aura, Yang Bai directly knelt down. In the imperial capital, who could compete with him? Kui Zhanhai's subordinates were not all the people he had just subdued. He also had a pair of children. His son was called Kui Zhongyun, and his daughter was called Kui Xiaoxiao. Both of them were in the engravement realm. Kui Zhanhai was very low-key. After coming to the imperial capital, he lived in seclusion. However, his children were very arrogant and tyrannical in the imperial capital, causing a lot of trouble. Firstly, they were in the engravement realm, and the number of people who could suppress them could be counted on one hand. Secondly, their father was an expert of the immortal path, so no one dared to provoke them. Bang! The door was broken, and a figure flew in horizontally, landing heavily on the ground. Ling Han jumped out and saw a person lying in the courtyard. Who else could it be if not Shenyuan Dingguo? This guy was very miserable. He had been beaten up. His body was full of injuries, and he was lying there motionlessly. Ling Han immediately looked outside the door. There was a young man with his arms crossed, looking at him with a mocking gaze. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 34-37. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC. Even if Kui Zhongyun recovered his engravement realm cultivation, Ling Han still had the confidence to kill him. However, it was uncertain how many moves he would need. Kui Zhongyun did have some strength and could not be underestimated. However, Ling Han didn't want to fight in such a lingering manner. Twice, he had easily pressed his opponent's head to eat dirt. This time, he wanted to establish the might of the empire, so he had to win beautifully and cleanly. Therefore, Heavenly Rune Jade was the best choice. With his telekinesis, the weight of the Heavenly Rune Jade immediately decreased. 9,000 jin, 8,000 jin, 7,000 jin. Ling Han, prepare to regret this, Kui Zhongyun coldly said. He rushed out, and with a bang, his aura surged. His heart, liver, and other organs that had been inscribed with runes all began to glow, infusing his body with a terrifying strength. Heaven-dominating fist. He fiercely swung out a fist, linked with a high-level energy, condensing a large area of black light on his fist, and smashed it towards Ling Han. It was just a punch, but it was like an iron wak, shockingly huge. Everyone hissed. This person was too terrifying. How could he draw upon such a terrifying high-level energy? Ling Han was also a little shocked. This Kui Zhongyun must have a rather profound spirit map in his hands, otherwise it would be impossible for him to trigger such a powerful high-level energy. This was not enough to scare him, but if the two of them were to fight, it would be difficult for Ling Han to suppress him in a short time. In addition, Kui Zhongyun must have mastered many ancient secret skills, so it might be very difficult to deal with him. After all, Ling Han did not have a crushing advantage in terms of strength, so both sides would have to compete in techniques and combat experience. Hong, Kui Zhongyun arrived. His fists struck out furiously, and the aura behind him surged, turning into a divine statue that was 10 jong tall. Its eyes were wide open in anger, and it emitted a terrifying pressure. Ling Han didn't care at all. He had reached the 7th transformation in the blood transformation realm. The sixth transformation was the Blood Chi Emperor transformation, meaning that their baleful aura was as terrifying as a monarch. Once they reached the seventh transformation, just how terrifying would their baleful aura be? He was the only one who intimidated others. How could others intimidate him? Ling Han smiled faintly. With a wave of his right hand, the heavenly rune jade shot out. He started from 6 times the speed of sound and quickly climbed to 7, 8, and 9 times the speed of sound. Then, he withdrew his psyche power and instantly changed the weight from 3 kilograms to 10,000 kilograms. It was so horrifying that even an enlightening realm cultivator would die from this attack. Perhaps even a mystery-seeking realm cultivator would not dare to face it directly. Unfortunately, there was only one piece. Not only did he have to think about how to retrieve it, but he also had to compress it for 10 seconds. Otherwise, Ling Han would really dare to challenge the secret realm. However, Qui Zhongyun was only at the engravement realm. The heavenly pattern jade shot out, instantly striking Qui Zhongyun's chest. After that, Qui Zhongyun's entire body exploded. Only his 2 legs were left, and they were still stumbling forward, causing people to panic. Dead silence. Who would have thought that? Qui Zhongyun had already displayed the strength of an engravement realm, and had even channeled such a terrifying high-level energy. Moreover, the fist technique he used was also extremely terrifying. This punch should have contained boundless power. Even if Ling Han had fled in a sorry state, not daring to face it head-on, the crowd would have felt that it was only natural. However, Ling Han had simply thrown out a stone and smashed Qui Zhongyun to death. Smashed to death, smashed to death, smashed to death. A dignified engravement realm cultivator had actually been smashed to death by a stone. Not only was he smashed to death, but his entire body had also exploded, leaving only his 2 legs. Hiss, too terrifying. This was definitely not because Qui Zhongyun was not strong enough, but because Ling Han was too terrifying. Damn, this guy was even stronger than Hong Tian Bu. At least, back then, it was only said that Hong Tian Bu could defeat an engravement realm cultivator in the extreme bone realm, but how could he kill someone with just a raise of his hand? Ling Han walked with large strides towards the place where the heavenly rune jade had landed. Someone bent down and picked it up. The stone was incomparably clean, without a single trace of blood. Again, Ling Han said indifferently. Coincidentally, the person who picked up the heavenly rune jade was Jiyu Xiangming. This guy was incomparably conflicted because he was holding on to the heavenly rune jade and knew how heavy it was. No wonder it could kill an engravement realm cultivator in a single strike. The problem was, how terrifying did Ling Han have to be able to throw something that weighed 10,000 kilograms at such a high speed? You dare! An ice-cold voice shouted. Kui Xiaoxiao had already walked over. Audacious thief, you actually dared to use a magic tool to kill my younger brother. I will make you pay with your blood. After speaking, she turned into a cloud and soared into the sky, descending towards Ling Han. Her eyesight was extraordinary, and she knew that the reason why Ling Han could kill Qui Zhongyun in a single strike was because of that strange stone. Therefore, she brazenly charged out fearlessly. This time, Qui Zhongyun had challenged Ling Han because of their father's instructions. It was to strike a blow to the morale of the people in the imperial capital, and to boost the Purple Rainbow sect's morale. She never expected that Qui Zhongyun would actually be defeated by Ling Han in a single move 3 times. Not only did it not boost the Purple Rainbow sect's morale, but it also greatly humiliated them. Therefore, she had to step forward now. She immediately boiled her blood chi, and her strength skyrocketed. She communicated with a high-level energy, and a black energy immediately coiled around her slender palm. It was actually even larger than Qui Zhongyun's. The aura on her body condensed into a sword, and she took the initiative to shoot at Ling Han. The aura ignored space and arrived almost instantly. Immediately, Ling Han felt a slight pain in his mind. This aura was like a sword, and it wanted to cut his sea of consciousness. Ling Han was astonished. This was the use of baleful chi. It also integrated psychokinesis, so it had a powerful destructive power towards the sea of consciousness. So it could be played like this, he revealed a smile. In terms of baleful chi, He had cultivated to the 7th transformation when he was in the blood transformation realm. Who could compare to him? With a single thought, Ling Han shattered the murderous aura sword that Kui Xiaoxiao had sent at him. Then, he used the murderous aura to counterattack. Wang, a bloody figure pounced out from his mind, pouncing towards Kui Xiaoxiao. What? Kui Xiaoxiao's small mouth opened slightly, and she silently expressed the shock in her heart. Not only did her mental attack not injure the opponent, it had instead caused the opponent to fiercely counterattack. The baleful qi attack was too fast. Even if Kui Xiaoxiao was in the engravement realm, she could not dodge it. Instantly, this blood-red figure pounced into her sea of consciousness. Hong, Kui Xiaoxiao felt her sea of consciousness shake, and then it was completely blank. She could not feel anything. She hurriedly shivered, and regained her senses. This was a battle, how could she lose focus? However, an iron fist had already smashed towards her. It was already too late for her to dodge, and she forcefully stretched out her palm to block. Peng, the fist force surged, and she instantly staggered back. In such a hurry, she was unable to gather her full strength, and even if her blood qi was boiling, she was actually no match. Kui Xiaoxiao only felt a burning sensation on her face, as if there was still blood flowing down. She could not help but be shocked and horrified. What women paid the most attention to was their appearance. Now that there was blood on her face, had her beauty been ruined? "You deserve to die," she screamed, all her black hair standing on end. She was 10 times more furious than when Kui Zhongyun had been killed. Cell phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 34-38. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Cece Kui Xiaoxiao rushed over with a terrifying aura, wanting to kill Ling Han in one move. In fact, she was indeed stronger than Kui Zhongyun. Her speed was faster, her strength was greater, and the high-level energy she could communicate with was denser. Although they were only slightly stronger, when added together, the increase in battle prowess was not just a little bit. Ling Han was fearless as he unleashed another baleful qi impact. Even though Kui Xiaoxiao was prepared, she was still shaken to the point that her eyes lost focus. It took her at least half a second to recover. In a battle between experts, could half a second be wasted? Peng, she was once again blasted away by Ling Han. Fortunately, without the heavenly rune jade, Ling Han wouldn't be able to kill such a powerful engravement realm expert in one strike. He only managed to injure her. After a few times, Kui Xiaoxiao finally calmed down. She looked at Ling Han and frowned. "You reached the 6th transformation when you were in the blood transformation realm." She gritted her teeth. 20 meridians was not difficult, but 6 transformations was difficult. At the very least, she and Kui Zhongyun had not been able to do it. Ling Han nodded. He had indeed cultivated to the 6th transformation. There was nothing to hide about this. However, he would not voluntarily reveal that he had actually reached the 7th transformation. He was the only one in the entire Heavenly Sea Star who had reached the 7 changes, not to mention that no one had ever done it before or after. 6 transformations, blood qi emperor condensation. No wonder it has such a powerful deterrent force, said Kui Xiaoxiao ruthlessly. This additional transformation allowed her to surpass ordinary martial artists. She possessed a divine ability that would increase along with her realm. To other martial artists, such an ability was truly difficult to deal with. Her cultivation was clearly higher, but she was badly affected, causing her to be unable to fully display her strength. Ling Han shrugged and said, "Don't be so emotional. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you." His killing intent surged. Since he had already killed once, he didn't mind killing another of Kui Zhonhai's sons. However, Kui Xiaoxiao raised her hand, and a firework soared into the sky, emitting a dazzling light. Even through the window, it would probably be flashed. She was calling for help, and the biggest possibility was her old man, Kui Zhonhai. Ling Han's expression finally became serious. If an expert of the immortal path came, how would he face him? Run away under the divine will of an expert of the immortal path, where could he escape to? From the moment Ling Han accepted the challenge to killing Kui Zhonhai, he was already prepared to face Kui Zhonhai head-on. He was betting on Chen Fengyan's domineering attitude. He would never tolerate anyone behaving atrociously in the imperial capital. Ling Han, run, someone shouted to Ling Han. Yes, once Kui Zhenhai arrives, you won't be able to leave. You killed his son, so he definitely won't let you off. Many kind-hearted people spoke to Ling Han, telling him to take advantage of this time to escape. Kui Xiaoxiao sneered, you killed a member of my Kui family, and you still want to pat your ass and pretend that nothing happened. Ling Han ignored him and looked at Jiyu Xiangming. Aren't you tired after carrying it for so long? Jiyu Xiangming sighed. He would never be able to take revenge on Ling Han in this lifetime. The gap between the two of them was as wide as heaven and earth. Furthermore, this gap would not shrink, but would only grow larger. He obediently handed over the heavenly pattern jade, not daring to play any tricks. Ling Han received the heavenly pattern jade, put it away, and quietly waited for Kui Zhenhai's arrival. In just a short while, they saw a figure treading through the sky. His speed was astonishing, definitely exceeding 10 times the speed of sound, and he left a long trail behind him. Everyone's divine soul was seized. Treading through the sky, was this an immortal? Xiao, this person landed on the ground. He was about 30 years old, had a slender figure, and had a square face that made him look very dignified. Kui Zhenhai Ling Han thought. That day, the demon rat had also treaded through the sky, but when it saw Chen Fengyang treading through the air step by step, it was incomparably shocked. Evidently, hovering in the air at a slow speed was far more difficult than flying at high speed. If Kui Zhenhai had enough strength, then he would definitely hover in the air, and that would increase his divine might. Immortals were high and mighty, while mortals were low to the ground. Therefore, Kui Zhenhai was not low profile, but his strength was insufficient. Father. Kui Xiaoxiao went up to greet him. Younger brother was killed. Kui Zhenhai's gaze sharpened, and he said, who did it? Kui Xiaoxiao pointed at Ling Han, and said, it was him. Kui Zhenhai looked at Ling Han, and revealed a hint of surprise. A mere bone could actually kill Changyun. He couldn't believe it. The difference in realm was too great. His son should have swept through the inscription realm, so how could he be killed by a small martial artist with a bone? Pu. Hearing Kui Zhenhai's words, many people choked. Just now, Kui Zhongyun was easily oppressed by Ling Han, and then he said the fact that Ling Han was in the inscription realm. In fact, many people believed it, because in their eyes, it was already inconceivable to cross a realm to fight, let alone to defeat someone with a higher realm. But now, Kui Zhenhai personally said that Ling Han was only a bone. How could a cultivator of the celestial path say such things? Hiss, Ling Han was too monstrous. He was weaker by more than a realm, yet he could still kill his opponent in one move. Although not many people had seen Hong Tian Bu in action, everyone believed that even that heaven-suppressing monster couldn't do it to this extent. Kui Zhenhai snorted, and the noise of the crowd instantly disappeared. The pressure of a cultivator of the celestial path was too terrifying. He looked at Ling Han, and his brows slightly furrowed. Letting his son challenge Ling Han was his idea. In his eyes, the so-called heaven-suppressing monster and the pride of the empire were simply the bragging of ignorant fools. He had great ambitions, and wanted to seize the Chen family's foundation in one fell swoop. Therefore, he wanted his son to first defeat Ling Han and Hong Tian Bu, and destroy the morale of the people in the imperial capital. At that time, he would then defeat Chen Fengyang, and taking over the throne would be a matter of course. Who would have thought that before the weakest, Ling Han, could be eliminated, his son would be killed first? His son was killed, and he was naturally furious. In addition, not only did he fail to establish his authority, but he was also slapped in the face. Naturally, he was full of anger. Since that was the case, then there was no need to beat around the bush. He would personally make a move and sweep everything away. In any case, this world depended on whose fist was bigger. Brat, you dare to kill this seat's son? Kui Zhenhai said coldly. Who gave you such dog guts? Ling Han's gaze was flat, and he said, in a spar, death and injury are unavoidable. If you are even afraid of this, what kind of martial artist are you? Dog guts to the extreme, Kui Zhenhai snorted. Still not kneeling for this seat. Wang, a strong aura pressed towards Ling Han. This was the attack of a cultivator of the celestial path. Even if he didn't use his true strength, just his psyche power, it was still enough to shake the 3 souls and 7 spirits of a secret-seeking cultivator out of his body. To be able to kill with a single thought, this was a cultivator of the celestial path. Ling Han gathered all his psyche power, and using his killing intent as the tip, he formed a fist and punched towards the psyche power. End of chapter. Phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 34-39. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Si Bang. Ling Han's entire body trembled while blood flowed out of his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and he seemed to be in a horrible state. Experts of the immortal path were truly powerful. Just a glare from them had almost killed a demon-level genius. However, this also showed how powerful Ling Han was. He could receive an attack from an expert of the immortal path and not die. Kui Zhenhai was also slightly stunned. He did not expect Ling Han to be able to withstand his spiritual attack and not die. From this point alone, this kid was indeed 10 times, no, 100 times more outstanding than Kui Zhongyun. Unfortunately, this person was not his son. On the contrary, he was the enemy who killed his son. You have some strength. No wonder you dare to be so impudent. However, before me, you are just an ant, Kui Zhenhai said coolly. Those who kill my son will die. He attacked brazenly from afar with a palm strike that turned into thousands of sharp swords that shot towards Ling Han in unison. Every sharp sword was wrapped in high-level energy, flying over in a dense manner, covering the sky and covering the earth. No one below the immortal path could resist this attack. After crossing the immortal gate, a living being's life level would increase by leaps and bounds. Compared to the secret-seeking realm, it was a completely different level. There was no comparison at all. Therefore, when experts of the immortal path attacked, mortals could only wait for death. Ling Han did not want to wait for death. He was waiting for a miracle. Tens of thousands of swords attacked, forming a black mass. Right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared. No one saw how he appeared. It was just that a ball of light suddenly condensed, and then he appeared, blocking in front of Ling Han, facing the thousands of sharp swords. This person stretched out his hand and pushed. Instantly, the tens of thousands of sharp swords stopped. He then stretched out his hand and pressed down. Pa, the sword shadows were all shattered. Everyone was stunned. Someone actually blocked the attack of an expert of the immortal path. Hiss, did Chen Fengyang make his move? When everyone looked over, they were shocked because they didn't know this person at all. Kui Zhenhai revealed a solemn expression and asked, "Who are you?" This was a mysterious person. His surroundings were shrouded in brilliance, but his face would appear from time to time, so everyone was sure that he was not Chen Fengyang. But other than Chen Fengyang, there was actually another expert of the immortal path guarding the imperial capital. Previously, the old eunuch Zhu Qi had already shocked everyone. The imperial capital actually had a secret-seeking expert guarding it. This time, it was even more shocking. An expert of the immortal path had directly appeared. Just how many trump cards did their Saint Emperor have hidden? The mysterious man said, "I am the spirit of the imperial capital's Green Dragon formation. My duty is to guard the capital region and prevent cultivators of the celestial path from interfering. You have violated the rules, so I am here to suppress you." Formation spirit. Everyone was astonished. Their imperial capital actually had a protective array formation. Moreover, from the tone of the array spirit, it could even suppress cultivators of the celestial path. This was too shocking. Ling Han heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. As expected, Chen Fengyang had not been cultivating all day. He had already made preparations. As long as someone dared to stand up and resist, there was no need to worry about the experts of the immortal path. "Suppress me," Kui Zhenhai sneered. Chen Fengyang, you really are crazy enough. You didn't even show yourself and only sent out a formation spirit to suppress me. The Saint Emperor is high and mighty. There is no need for you to act personally, the formation spirit said indifferently, as if it understood human nature. "Fine, I want to see how you will suppress me." Kui Zhenhai was so angry that he laughed. Boom, He exploded with all his strength. His clothes suddenly bulged, and a light pattern appeared between his brows, spreading to his entire face. Then, his whole body shone, appearing incomparably divine. Kill. He charged out and slammed a palm towards the formation spirit. Not only did he want to destroy the formation spirit, but he also wanted to kill Ling Han, who was behind him. The formation spirit went up to meet him. Its body was already glowing, and it also emitted a divine radiance. Boom! The two of them collided, and instantly, terrifying ripples spread in all directions. This was a clash between cultivators of the celestial path. The ripples were incomparably terrifying, enough to kill cultivators of the secret-seeking realm. The formation spirit pressed his hand down. Trap. 4 screens of light appeared, enveloping it and Kui Junhai within, and also trapping the surging ripples inside. Bang, 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 bang. No matter how turbulent the ripples were, they couldn't blast out at all, avoiding a catastrophe. Otherwise, the people in the plaza would have died in large numbers, and even the imperial palace might not have been saved. It would have been razed to ruins. Kui Junhai couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. The formation spirit's strength exceeded his expectations. But he was still proud, saying, "Although you are powerful, you are still a formation spirit and not a real existence of this world. How can you match up to my hundreds of years of bitter cultivation?" He grabbed the spine at the back of his head and pulled hard. A shocking scene appeared. He actually pulled out a long beam of light from his body. This beam of light was a bit like a sword, but also a bit like a snake, and its body was slightly curved. This is the foundation of the human Tao that I cultivated. I studied the skeleton of a true dragon and built it into a great dragon, Kui Junhai said proudly. Kui Junhai said proudly. As he spoke, the long pillar in his hand let out a dragon's roar and transformed into a huge dragon with 4 legs. Die for me. With a light roar from Kui Junhai, the great dragon moved its 4 legs and charged towards the formation spirit. A pressure that was above the mortal world assaulted them, causing everyone to shiver. Thankfully, there were 4 screens of light that blocked the majority of the pressure. Otherwise, everyone here would have knelt down. Immortals were higher than the 9 heavens, and mortals could only worship them. The formation spirit, however, was calm and unafraid. He faced the great dragon and punched out. Simple, direct, and violent, very much like Chen Fengyan's style. Could it be that the formation spirit could inherit the personality of the person who set up the formation? Peng, the punch landed, but a strange scene appeared. The great dragon actually tunneled into the formation spirit's fist. What was going on? But in the next instant, the great dragon was spat out from the formation spirit's mouth again. But this time, it lost its dragon form and turned into a beam of light, as if it was a sword that had not been sharpened. Xiao, the beam of light flew back into Kui Junhai's hand. You. Kui Junhai turned pale with fright. You actually extracted the essence of my great dragon. His foundation of humanity was far stronger than those of the same level because he had observed true dragons and cultivated a sliver of dragon chi. But now, this dragon chi had been absorbed by the formation, so his advantage naturally no longer existed. The formation spirit was unmoved, and said indifferently, "I am the spirit of the green dragon formation. To me, dragon chi is a powerful and nourishing thing. You used a great dragon to attack me, so naturally, you will only suffer losses." F***ck. Kui Junhai cursed in his heart. How could he have known that this formation spirit was so freakish that it could actually extract the foundational soul? Otherwise, how could he possibly have done so? But his heart was also beating like a drum. To be able to so easily extract his foundational soul, just how powerful did this formation spirit have to be able to do so? This was not something that could be done with just elemental restraints. Fear suddenly rose in him. Chen Fengyang had not even made a move, and just the formation spirit alone had already caused him to suffer a great loss. If he continued to be entangled, the situation might become even worse. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3441. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC. When news of Kui Junhai being suppressed by the formation spirit spread, It caused a great stir in all the historical sites. Those experts of the immortal path who had mysteriously appeared all released the people they had detained, and changed to imparting peerless Tao techniques as bait, enticing the people to become their disciples. This move was very useful. Who didn't want to become a strong cultivator, to be high above and look down on all living things? It was just that it was too difficult to enter the Imperial Academy. In the past, they only recruited nobles. Although the restrictions had been lifted, the requirements to enter were still too high, blocking a large number of people outside. Now that there were cultivators of the celestial path establishing sects and passing down supreme Tao techniques, who wouldn't be happy? Plus, the formation spirit's message to the Saint Emperor was very clear. As long as it didn't violate the laws of the Empire, Chen Fengyang would be magnanimous. Therefore, entering these sects to cultivate was not a betrayal of the Empire. In an instant, the entire Empire was stirred. Large numbers of young people headed to those historical sites to change their fates. But the Imperial Academy was naturally different. The chairman of the council passed down a strict order forbidding the children of imperial officials and generals from entering sects. They could only be sent to academies established by the Empire. With such a strict rule in place, naturally no one dared to go against it. Entering sects was not against the law, but disobeying orders was a great crime. Cultivation required resources, and it was difficult for poor families to produce noble children. Therefore, although these sects recruited many disciples, there were very few who could be called talents. Geniuses were even fewer. In reality, there were geniuses in poor families, but because of their family conditions, they missed the best age to cultivate. Now, if they wanted to catch up, they would have to pay at least 10 times the price. Chen Fengyang cultivated diligently. Now, this world was becoming more and more lively, and also more and more chaotic. It was all because of Chen Fengyang's personal might that they were suppressing the situation. Once he was defeated one day, or died, then this empire that had been flourishing for a while would definitely collapse in a single day. Therefore, only by becoming strong could one win respect and live freely. He stabilized his realm and then continued to increase his cultivation. This time, it was a rush, so it was inevitable that there would be situations where the foundation was unstable. Therefore, it must be checked in advance to not leave behind future troubles. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. Chen Fengyang still hadn't come out of seclusion and didn't take any action against the experts of the immortal path who suddenly appeared. As time passed, some people started to get restless. Chen Fengyang should be at the foundation establishment realm as well. However, he set up the Azure Dragon formation in the imperial capital, which is why he could suppress Quizhanhai. The world has only just begun to recover. It's already extremely difficult for people to advance into the foundation establishment stage. It's impossible for them to break through again. According to reliable sources, the Demon Emperor managed to block 100 moves from Chen Fengyang. The Demon King has just forged the foundation of humanity. Based on this, Chen Fengyang should be at the late or peak human foundation stage. At most, I've established the foundation of the heavenly Tao. Rumor had it that it had a nose and eyes. The first step on the immortal path is foundation establishment. Ling Han murmured. According to the rumors, foundation establishment was above mystic seeking. Of course, foundation establishment was many times more powerful than mystic seeking. After leaping through the immortal gate, the leap in life level was unimaginable. However, the heavenly rat demon once said that Chen Fengyang's cultivation is not only at the core creation realm. Foundation establishment is the first step on the immortal path. Core creation must be the second step. As for Chen Fengyang, he's at least on the third step. Hiss. Ling Han clenched his teeth. Theoretically speaking, it was difficult to nurture a foundation establishment realm cultivator in the current environment. For example, the demon race only had one demon emperor who had reached this level. The demon race controlled the land, sea, and air, so the resources they had were definitely much more than the human race. That was why the demon race was so confident that they wanted Xianbei country to submit. However, Chen Fengyang's strength was completely unreasonable. He stood on the third step or even higher. How did he cultivate? If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Ling Han wouldn't have believed that Chen Fengyang was so powerful. If it was merely cultivation, Ling Han definitely did not think that Chen Fengyang would be able to reach such high achievements. Thus, he definitely had an astonishing treasure trove in his hands, which was why he was able to leave the others far behind, and leave them in the dust. However, the resources in Chen Fengyang's hands were probably only enough for him to use. Even his sons could only be said to have average cultivation and were far from being monstrous. Right now, there are rumors everywhere. Some of the fake are true, and some of the real are false. I reckon that even if I told them what the demon rat said that day, those people wouldn't believe it. People always believe what they want to believe. They subconsciously avoid unfavorable news and treat it as fake. From the looks of it, the current peace and tranquility won't last long. Another storm is coming. Ling Han shook his head, put aside all distracting thoughts, and focused on himself. 2 months had passed. The environment had changed abnormally fast. The power of heaven and earth had become denser and denser. Cultivation was twice the result with half the effort. What originally needed 2 to 3 days of cultivation could now be achieved in 1 day. This gave many new soldiers who had just stepped onto the path of martial art a chance to catch up. If they could get a few more treasured fruits, there would probably be a large group of young experts in the engravement realm. Ling Han's progress wasn't slow either. He was about to reach the peak of two-bone. In these 2 months, his biggest improvement was in the use of the heavenly pattern jade and the demon monkey fist. Now, he only needed 5 seconds to compress the heavenly rune jade. Furthermore, after advancing to the second bone realm, his telekinesis had improved a little. At most, he could compress the heavenly rune jade to 2 catties and 8 tails. Although it was only an improvement of 2 tails, it was a reduction of 2 tails from the foundation of 1.5 kilograms. This was an improvement of over 6%. Unfortunately, the speed of the heavenly pattern jade still couldn't break through 10 times the speed of sound. This made Ling Han feel regretful. For the demon monkey fist, every punch he threw out now would have a demon monkey appear. It was incomparably ruthless and strengthened the fist force, increasing its destructive power. At this moment, there was finally a force that couldn't hold back and entered the imperial capital. This was the Hunyuan sect. An elder brought a young man to the entrance of the imperial capital academy. They didn't say anything and just sat there cross-legged, blocking the entrance. Immediately, a guard went up to chase them away. In the end, the other party spoke. This time, they were here to challenge the academy's outstanding students. It would be a one-on-one battle, and if there was someone who could defeat that young man in the same realm or age, then they would pat their butts and leave. If not, they would block the entrance for 10 days. The news immediately aroused the fighting spirit of the students, and they all came out to challenge. In the end, no matter who challenged, they were all easily defeated by the young man. This news spread throughout the imperial capital like a hurricane. The Hunyuan sect had come to challenge the imperial capital academy, but no one was a match for them. This was a heavy slap in the face. The Imperial Capital Academy had gathered the most outstanding students in the entire Xianbei country, but they couldn't beat a sect disciple who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Where was the Imperial Capital Academy's face? Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3442. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC Emperor Capital Academy was blocked, and no one could win. At first glance, it looked like Emperor Capital Academy was useless. There wasn't a single person who could fight in such a big academy. They were all trash. But thinking about it again, Emperor Capital Academy gathered all the geniuses in the country. If they couldn't find anyone who could fight, were there really no geniuses? Or was it that the academy didn't teach well and couldn't teach people? If it was the latter, then who would want to enter Emperor Capital Academy in the future? This symbol of the best academy in the kingdom couldn't even compare to Hunyuan sect. Yes, when everyone chose the path of martial art in the future, they would definitely consider Hunyuan sect first and not Emperor Capital Academy. This was to weaken Xianbei country's rule from the source. With Hunyuan sect, there would be another Green Sky sect, Ocean River sect, and so on. They would continue to block the entrance and completely destroy Emperor Capital Academy's reputation. In this way, would Emperor Capital Academy still be able to recruit geniuses? After Ling Han found out, he couldn't help but look at this old and young man from Hunyuan sect in a new light. This move was really vicious, but he couldn't find any flaws on the surface. They didn't break the kingdom's laws at all, so how should they punish them? There really weren't many true geniuses on Emperor Capital Academy's side. Other than Ling Han and Hong Tianbu, these two monstrous geniuses, there were only a few princes. The demon race didn't lack geniuses, but they were originally unwilling to submit, and they still wanted them to work for them. Hee. Not long after, there was news that Hong Tianliang was going to make a move. Speaking of Hong Tianliang, although he was the grandson of Grand Preceptor Hong and could be considered a genius, he was actually a tragic figure. He had lived in the shadow of his elder brother for a long time and had been able to keep his fighting spirit high for so many years. It was actually very difficult for him to surpass Hong Tianbu. But there was Hong Tianbu in front of him and Ling Han behind him. They were both insurmountable mountains. He must be very depressed. Now, Hong Tianliang stood up to fight the Hunyuan sect youth. Could it be that he wanted to make a comeback? Ling Han found it interesting, and he also thought that he couldn't let Hunyuan sect continue like this. If Hong Tianliang couldn't handle it, he would make a move. The next day, Ling Han took a few children out and ran to the Imperial Capital Academy. At this time, there were already many people here, including many princes. All of them were eager to give it a try. Previously, Ling Han fought against the Purple Rainbow sect and killed Kui Zhongyun. Although he provoked Kui Zhanhai, a powerhouse of the Immortal Path, in the end, he was able to escape danger and even obtained a great opportunity. Therefore, this time, all the princes wanted to snatch this business. However, that young man was really strong, and they had no confidence in winning. Therefore, they had been observing, trying to find that young man's weakness. All humans had weaknesses and inadequacies. It was just that the Academy's disciples who had fought earlier had been too weak and had been unable to force out the young man's true strength. The young man had just casually attacked, so it was naturally impossible for him to reveal any flaws. Hong Tianliang, on the other hand, was different. No matter what, he was a genius of his generation. Although he could not compare to Ling Han and Hong Tianbu, no matter what, he was still able to force out some of that youngster's true strength. Therefore, many princes came as well. They were all waiting for Hong Tianliang to be their sword testing stone, to create opportunities for them. Ling Han had arrived very early. He sat on a thick branch that was very high off the ground, and had a very wide field of vision. The Calabash brothers naturally all sat beside him, with snacks in their mouths. Even the Tsunda third brother was no exception. Obviously, he had been led astray by Ling Han. That old man is also a powerhouse of the Immortal Path and is standing on the first step, second brother said. Ling Han nodded. That old man should be in the foundational realm. However, previously, he had heard that the foundational realm was divided into the foundation of humanity and the foundation of heavenly Tao, but he did not know what realm the old man was in. Oh, I remember now. Eldest brother clapped his hands. The first step of the Immortal Path is indeed the foundational realm, which builds the foundation of the Immortal Path. Different people build different foundations. The most common foundation is the foundation of humanity. However, when the foundation of humanity is completed, one can actually rush to a higher realm. But some people are talented. After building the foundation of humanity, they can build another foundation, which is called the foundation of heavenly Tao. And some people are blessed by nature. They can break through the limit and build the third foundation, which is the foundation of extreme Tao. The more foundation you build, the more solid your Immortal Path foundation will be. In the future, you will be able to rush to a higher realm and break through more limits. Ling Han nodded. No wonder the rumors said that Kui Zhanhai built the foundation of humanity and Chen Fengyang most likely built the foundation of heavenly Tao. So this was how they came about. He looked at the young man and activated his eye sorcery. He saw something that the mortal eye could not see. This young man's vitality was extremely strong, like a furnace, burning fiercely. His bones were all white, and 4 symbols could be seen on his chest, flashing with terrifying power. 4 patterns also, he had 6 bones when he was in the ultimate bone realm. Otherwise, if he had broken through to the 5th bone, his bones would have been 7-colored. No wonder he dared to come here to block the door. He was indeed powerful. Hong Tianliang is here, someone suddenly said. Instantly, the crowd dispersed, and like stars surrounding the moon, a young man came out to welcome him. It was Hong Tianliang. After not seeing him for a few months, Hong Tianliang's aura seemed even more profound. But occasionally, a little of it would leak out, but it was as turbulent as the tide. Ling Han took a look, and had already understood Hong Tianliang's cultivation level. 3 bones. This cultivation speed was really fast. But even if that young man suppressed his cultivation to the ultimate bone realm, 6 bones would beat 3 bones. After all, Hong Tianliang had not broken through the true limit in the meridian opening and blood transformation realms. Hong Tianliang, however, was full of confidence. He quickly walked in front of the old man and the young man and stopped. "You are also from Emperor Capital Academy?" the young man asked. Hong Tianliang, "I graduated from Emperor Capital Academy." Hong Tianliang nodded. The young man was slightly surprised. "You are not Hong Tianbu, nor are you Ling Han." Hong Tianliang immediately revealed an angry expression. "What did you mean? Did you think that only these 2 were worthy of being your opponent?" "I am Hong Tianliang," he emphasized. The young man smiled and said, "Seeing that you can barely be considered an opponent, I will tell you my name. Luo Jintang." Hong Tianliang said coldly, "Let's fight. You're at 3 bones. If I only suppress my cultivation base to the ultimate bone realm, you might not be able to block one of my attacks." Luo Jintang pondered. "How about this? I'll suppress my strength to 3 bones as well." Hong Tianliang's expression became even uglier. He, who was 3 bones, definitely had the battle strength of 5 bones. In fact, many of the 5 bones were not his opponent. But Luo Jintang actually said that he could not take one move from him. How could he not be angry? How could there be so many geniuses in this world? Did he think that everyone was Hong Tianbu or Ling Han? "You are boasting like this. If you lose later, it will be very embarrassing," he said calmly, but his anger was burning. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3443. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Luo Jintang crooked his finger. "Make your move." Hong Tianliang took a deep breath. The bones in his body were glowing faintly. He curled his body slightly, as though he had turned into a ferocious beast. "Interesting." Luo Jintang revealed a surprised expression. "This is the Earth Spirit tyrannical beast art." Hong Tianliang's expression changed. "You actually recognize this technique of mine?" This was imparted to him by Hong Tianbu, and it was obtained from an ancient site. How could this person recognize it? Haha, it's not like it's some ancient art. What's so strange about recognizing it? Luo Jintang said indifferently. Hong Tianliang snorted. "Boasting shamelessly. I'll let you know the price of speaking arrogantly." He charged out and punched at Luo Jintang. A strange scene appeared. The earth twisted and a stone golem broke through the earth behind Luo Jintang. It also swung its fists at Luo Jintang. This stone man was much taller, at least 30 meters tall. His fist was even bigger than Luo Jintang's entire body. Unexpectedly, he could also communicate with high-level energy. His entire fist was wrapped in a faint black light. Luo Jintang smiled faintly, and casually threw a punch behind him. Peng, the force of the punch landed, and the stone man immediately shattered. At this moment, Hong Tianliang had already arrived. Luo Jintang kicked out, aiming straight for Hong Tianliang's face. It was an obvious humiliation. He could clearly use his feet to disperse the stone golem's attack, and then use his fists to deal with Hong Tianliang, but he just had to do it the other way around. The intention of this humiliation was extremely obvious. Hong Tianliang roared angrily, his fist slamming down fiercely. Bam! The fist and leg collided, instantly triggering an energy wave that spread out in all directions. Then, Hong Tianliang staggered back, only coming to a stop after taking 11 steps back. This is the power of your 3 bones. Hong Tianliang's face was filled with shock. Not bad. Luo Jintang nodded. Hong Tianliang's face was full of seriousness. 3 bones against 3 bones, and he was inferior in terms of strength. That meant that his opponent's foundation was stronger than his. However, he was not afraid to fight. Although strength was the most important part of one's combat strength, it was not everything. Again, he launched another attack, and as he punched out, more stone golems emerged from the ground and punched out at Luo Jintang. They had to be on guard, because the golem's fist was surrounded by high-level energy. If they were hit by it, it would be no laughing matter. However, one could see how powerful Luo Jintang was. A casual punch from him could shatter the stone man, and with a loud shout, the power of the sound waves was terrifying and could similarly shatter the stone man. After blocking a few moves, he began to counterattack. Bang bang bang. Although he was tall and slender, his attacks were extremely domineering, and he was like a raging bull that went on a rampage. The moment he displayed his prowess, Hong Tianliang immediately fell into a disadvantageous position. In just 100 moves, he was sent flying by a single punch. If it was a life-and-death battle, he would naturally be able to continue fighting. But if it was just a spar, his loss was extremely obvious. His face was filled with sadness and disappointment, but he had no choice but to say, "I lost." In the beginning, only Hong Tianbiyu had been able to suppress him, and then Ling Han had appeared. Although there were many geniuses in the monster race, they were a different race after all. Moreover, everyone knew that the monster race was extremely powerful below the celestial path, so it was normal for them to be inferior to him. In any case, there was still a long way to go. But now, Luo Jintang had appeared and defeated him very easily. This seriously hurt his heart. Hong Tianliang's mental fortitude was already very strong. He had endured the blows from Hong Tianbiyu and Ling Han, but the same thing could not happen more than 3 times. This blow had completely destroyed his fighting spirit. He turned around and left in a daze. Luo Jintang smiled faintly and didn't take it to heart. He sat down cross-legged again as if nothing had happened. This Luo Jintang is really unfathomable. Hong Tianliang actually wasn't able to force him to use his true strength. The 13th prince frowned slightly. "Your Highness, since the other party's strength is unfathomable, it's better not to be rash. It's fine if you win, but if you lose, it will be a huge blow to your prestige," an advisor said. The 13th prince shook his head. "When Kui Zhongyun was being domineering, I didn't attack him because I didn't want to. In the end, I missed a great opportunity. This is a test from Father. Even if I lose, it will at least show that I have the courage to fight, which will greatly increase my score in Father's heart. Qianji, you don't understand. Father's strength is unparalleled in the world. As long as he says to let me inherit the throne, then even if I'm an idiot, I can still sit firmly on the throne. Your Highness is wise." That advisor quickly flattered. The 13th prince made up his mind and immediately walked toward Luo Jintang. The 13th prince is moving. Is he going to challenge Luo Jintang? He's the son of the sacred emperor. His strength is definitely extraordinary. The 13th prince is heroic. After whispering for a while, the crowd immediately cheered for the 13th prince. The 13th prince had a smile on his face and nodded at the people around him, appearing calm. Ling Han was also quite interested. He only knew that the eldest imperial prince possessed a divine physique, and had now advanced into the mystery-seeking tier. Meanwhile, the 7th imperial prince was proficient in spiritual energy, and had reached the so-called Great Accomplishment tier. Now, there was another imperial prince who was ranked near the top who was about to make a move, which made him feel a bit of anticipation. He used his ocular technique and saw that the 13th prince's bones were colorful and there were 5 inscription patterns on his chest. 5 bones that had broken through to the peak of the engravement realm. The 13th prince hadn't entered the enlightening realm yet. Otherwise, there would be aperture lights around his body. Now that he couldn't see any, it was obvious that he was still in the engravement realm. Luo Jintang opened his eyes but didn't stand up. He asked the 13th prince, "The current prince?" The 13th prince smiled faintly. "I'm Chen Wangxiang, ranked 13th, So it's the 13th prince. Luo Jintang finally stood up. The son of the sacred emperor. I wonder how strong he is. I'm in the 5-vein realm, the 13th prince said. Luo Jintang nodded. I'm in the 4-vein realm, so I don't need to suppress my cultivation. I can fight to my heart's content. Please. Please. After exchanging pleasantries, the two sides immediately attacked and began a fierce battle. The 13th prince was the son of the sacred emperor and was ranked near the top, so he naturally inherited some of Chen Fengyan's bloodline. He was very strong, but he was completely different from the 7th prince. He specialized in close combat, punching, elbowing, and kneeling. His attacks were ever-changing, as if every part of his body could be a weapon. Luo Jintang used a set of palm techniques. It was moderate and calm, but his defense was very stable. Both sides tested each other for a while before using their ultimate moves. The battle became extremely intense. Ling Han watched with great interest. Both of them weren't weak, and they were both in the engravement realm. They had their own unique fighting styles. It was worth learning from. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3445. BQG6. CC BQG6. Scyther Fire Dragon attacked, but the 9th prince did not dodge and directly rushed forward. Boom, the raging flames swept past, and the skin on his body turned scarlet red. It was obvious that he had been burned, but he did not feel it at all, and continued to charge towards Luo Jintang like a mad bull, intending to use the most barbaric manner to knock down his opponent. Ling Han was also a little surprised. This guy had cultivated his physique to such a terrifying level that even high-level fire energy could not burn him. His body has fused with the deep-sea black iron, and his body is extremely cold. To a large extent, his weakness of fear of fire has been solved, eldest baby commented. Fourth baby was disdainful. If I spit out a stream of fire, I guarantee that he will not be able to withstand it. Yes. The Calabash brothers nodded in agreement. They all had innate divine bodies, and the flames that fourth baby spat out were naturally far more powerful than ordinary high-level energy. Luo Jintang retreated continuously, unable to fight back. Seeing this scene, everyone became excited, and they waved their flags and shouted. He was indeed the son of the sacred emperor, one of the top 10 princes. He was too powerful. Ling Han was not optimistic about the 9th prince's chances, because Luo Jintang was too calm and relaxed. It was obvious that he did not understand the 9th prince's mystical ability, which was why he only dodged and did not attack. However, the situation could not continue like this. Sure enough, after a few dozen moves, Luo Jintang smiled and suddenly counterattacked. Bang! The 9th prince suddenly staggered and almost fell. What was going on? The crowd's cheers immediately stopped. There seemed to be signs of a comeback. The 9th prince steadied himself and looked at Luo Jintang. He frowned and said, I weigh more than 1,000,000 pounds, and I use my secret power to increase my weight by 100 times. You can actually affect me, Fut. Many people were so shocked that they spat out. Weighing more than 1,000,000 pounds, was he still human? Ling Han was not surprised. The 9th prince had fused with the deep-sea black iron, and it could be said that the bones in his body had been replaced by the deep-sea black iron. The density of the deep-sea black iron was astonishing. Because it was constantly under the pressure of the deep sea, and after hundreds or thousands of years, it was naturally compressed extremely tightly. In theory, the deep-sea black iron could not be obtained by human strength because no one could reach such a depth. Only when the world itself changed and the sea turned into mulberry fields could the deep-sea black iron appear. The strange thing was that Luo Jintang was able to affect the 9th prince's balance. Luo Jintang smiled. It would naturally be difficult for me to move your highness. However, it is not difficult to do so with your highness's own strength. Hearing this, Ling Han suddenly understood. This was because Luo Jintang had grasped the rhythm of the 9th prince's pulse. Therefore, as long as he used a small amount of strength, he could affect the 9th prince. This was the so-called 4 tails against 1,000 catties. It was also a kind of frequency attack. Ling Han couldn't help but look at Luo Jintang. This was the first person he had seen who could use a frequency attack. This piqued his curiosity and made him want to spar with him. The ninth prince pondered for a moment before saying, "It's not easy for you to think of a way to deal with me in such a short period of time." "Your Highness flatters me." Luo Jintang bowed slightly, appearing very modest. "But if you think you can defeat me like this, you are too naive." The ninth prince charged forward once more. Luo Jintang was already very confident. When the ninth prince closed in, he stretched out a hand and pushed back with just the right amount of strength. "Pa!" The ninth prince stumbled once more. His attack instantly dissipated, and he appeared to be in a rather sorry state. He didn't rush to attack and just watched quietly. In reality, the ninth prince's bones were forged from deep-sea black iron, which made his defense incomparably tyrannical. Even if he took a few punches or palms, he would still be fine. Thus, Luo Jintang didn't directly attack and just let the ninth prince fall to the ground. Ling Han rubbed his chin. How was he going to deal with the ninth prince's defense? He could attack with frequency. As long as he persisted in attacking with frequency, no matter how hard it would still be destroyed. In theory, even divine metal would crumble one day when it was attacked with frequency. It was just that this would take a very long time, so long that Ling Han wouldn't be able to look forward to it even if he died of old age. On the other hand, attacking with frequency would require one's fist to collide with the ninth prince's body, and there was a higher chance that one's fist would be smashed into pieces first. With the ninth prince's physique, it would take a very long time to injure or even kill him. Therefore, for the sake of efficiency, it was better to use the heavenly rune jade. Even if the ninth prince's entire body was made of deep-sea black iron, it would still be useless. The ninth prince would definitely have a hole in his body or even be smashed into pieces. While he was pondering, the ninth prince kept suffering setbacks. His flaws had been discovered by Luo Jintang, and he kept falling over. He couldn't even get close to Luo Jintang, so how could he win? Even if the ninth prince's physique was so strong that he wouldn't have to worry about falling over for a short period of time, how humiliating was it for a prince to keep falling over flat ground? The ninth prince roared angrily and pounced out again. Luo Jintang used the same trick again and struck out with his palm, wanting to make the ninth prince fall over again. However, just as he stretched out his hand, he let out a muffled groan as blood appeared on his fist. He frowned. He clearly hadn't seen the ninth prince make a move, so how could he be injured? Otherwise, no matter if the ninth prince raised his hand, leg, or even spat out an attack from his mouth, he would be able to defend himself. Boom, the ninth prince punched out, and Luo Jintang quickly retreated. Understood. Luo Jintang nodded. This was the ninth prince using the opened acupoints to attack him. Thus, the ninth prince didn't need to raise his hand or move his leg, and a mysterious force would shoot out from the acupoints, making the attack unpredictable. Was this cheating? Only those who had reached the enlightening realm could open their acupoints. However, the ninth prince had still suppressed his strength, and it was within the range of the engravement realm. "Jintang, continue," the old man at the side suddenly said. Luo Jintang nodded. So what if the ninth prince had used an enlightening realm technique? He could just treat it as the ninth prince having another divine ability. He was invincible in the same realm, so what was there to be afraid of? Kill. He finally became serious. His eyes shone with a divine light, and his entire aura changed. The golden bell appeared on his body again, but this time, it was imbued with half an ancient word. It was clearly only half a word, but it emitted an incomparably majestic aura, as if the entire heavens wanted to bow down to him. The ninth prince's fist arrived, and Luo Jintang didn't dodge or evade. Peng! The two fists collided, and the golden bell trembled slightly. However, the ninth prince didn't absorb any more of its energy. Luo Jintang roared again and launched a fierce counterattack. Peng! 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 He swung his fists repeatedly, pouring out attacks on the ninth prince. This kind of fighting style was the ninth prince's favorite. He laughed loudly and fought head-on without dodging. However, after dozens of attacks, the ninth prince's expression changed drastically, and blood seeped out of his arms. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3446. A Good Romance. BQG6. CC the ninth prince was injured. In a head-on confrontation, the ninth prince, who was known for his defense, was actually injured. God, this was too hard to accept. Admit it. Luo Jintang was no longer crazy. He was calm and indifferent. The golden bell that protected him also disappeared, especially that half-ancient character. When it disappeared, the big stone that was pressing down on everyone's heart was finally removed, and everyone's breathing resumed. The ninth prince still had the strength to fight, but his strongest defense had been broken. What was the point of continuing to fight? Moreover, he had already used an enlightening realm technique. It would be too embarrassing if he continued to fight. He nodded at Luo Jintang and turned to leave. He was too ashamed to say anything. Ling Han was curious and asked, "What's the origin of that character? That guy's ancestor must have been an amazing person. This is a kind of Dao inheritance, and we can borrow a trace of that person's Dao will," eldest baby said first. Fourth baby and fifth baby were very depressed. They had been interrupted. The two babies continued to encourage him. When they were about to say something different, they heard sixth baby say, "This kind of Dao inheritance must be that the ancient ancestor didn't die. That lucky descendant can obtain such an ability. It's like a divine ability." Damn, they had been interrupted again. Fourth baby and fifth baby were even more depressed. Even eldest baby said that it was amazing. Luo Jintang's ancestor must have been extraordinary. Most importantly, such an important person was still alive. Ling Han was comparing in his heart. Could he break the other's ability? That ancient character was too scary, and he didn't want to face it. "Dad, don't worry," second baby comforted him. "This kind of Dao inheritance is equivalent to having a trace of the ancient ancestor's might. It will indeed affect anyone." Second baby was still the most considerate. Moreover, the awakening of the ancient ancestor's legacy of the path can only happen in the inscription realm, third baby said. Inscribing patterns in the organs and merging the path can trigger the legacy of the path lying dormant in the body. Therefore, this is a method of the inscription realm. Ling Han nodded. He hadn't entered the inscription realm yet, so he lacked an offensive and defensive method. He was naturally at a disadvantage. However, what if a life and death battle erupted between him and Luo Jintang? Firstly, he wouldn't have suppressed his cultivation, and secondly, he wouldn't have hidden the ancient characters. I'll just use the heavenly rune jade to settle it. Only then did Luo Jintang sit down and start treating the wound on his hand while continuing to accept challenges. Some people wanted to take advantage of him, but they were defeated in one move. Everyone's morale was extremely low. Could it be that no one could suppress Luo Jintang? Then how would Emperor Capital College survive in the future? Who would still want to enter? There was one thing that he and Chen Fengyang shared in common, and that was that the more chaotic the world was, the more they needed to be united, and to strengthen their fists. Otherwise, if they were like a plate of loose sand, they would only be defeated one by one. Therefore, he could not allow Luo Jintang to destroy Xianbei country's current situation. Just as he was about to jump down from the tree, he suddenly stopped and looked into the distance. In the blink of an eye, a tall and slender man arrived gracefully, as if he was riding the wind. Hong Tian Step Hong Tianyu is back. It's Hong Tian Steps. The others also discovered it, and all of them cried out. Once Hong Tian Steps arrives, he will definitely defeat this person. If it's Hong Tian Steps, he will definitely be able to do it. Everyone was full of confidence in Hong Tian Steps. This was an undefeatable legend, and his cultivation was even higher than Ling Han's. Naturally, he was even more trustworthy. Hong Tian Steps arrived in large strides, and the crowd on both sides made way, allowing him to pass calmly. Luo Jintang's eyes brightened, and he stood up. Hong Tian Step. I'll wait for you for an hour. Hong Tian Steps stood still, both hands behind his back. Just this one action was like looking up at a tall mountain. Luo Jintang nodded and said, "Okay." The elder beside him could not help but sigh in his heart, knowing that in their first exchange, Luo Jintang had already lost. Luo Jintang agreed to rest for an hour, obviously thinking that he was not a match for Hong Tian's steps if he was not in peak condition. This was a sign of a lack of confidence. But the elder had no choice but to agree. The young man in front of him was indeed outstanding, and even he could not help but admire him. He obviously did not have a god body, but it made him think even more highly of him. From his point of view, a god body only had an innate advantage, but the path of martial art was long, and what was more important was comprehension, opportunity, perseverance, and hard work. This Hong Tian steps immediately suppressed Luo Jintang in terms of aura. Even if their strengths were equal, if they were to really fight, Luo Jintang would have already lost by 30%. This young man had a kind of aura, as if the heavens and earth were to stand on his side. The crowd was silent, waiting for Luo Jintang to recover, and then fight with Hong Tian's steps, only to suffer a crushing defeat and end perfectly. Ling Han used his eye technique and looked at Hong Tian's steps. White bones, which meant that he broke through with 6 bones. There were 6 inscription patterns in his body, which meant that he had reached 6 patterns. Also, there were more than 30 light spots on his body, like starlight. Ling Han was shocked. Opening realm. His improvement was rapid, and Hong Tian's steps improvement was not slow either. It was already at the opening realm. Just as Ling Han was sizing up Hong Tian's steps suddenly raised his head and looked at him. Their gazes met, and it was like 2 sharp swords clashing. Hong Tian's steps faintly smiled and retracted his gaze, as if he was disdainful of Ling Han. Looks like a battle is unavoidable today. Ling Han murmured, but an intense battle intent appeared on his face. He had always wanted to fight with Hong Tian's steps, but the gap between their realms was too big, and if he fought, he would definitely lose. But this time was different, he had absolute fairness. The question was, would 10 minutes be enough? Dad, this person is very strange. Second baby also looked over. This person has a strange energy on his body. It should be recently obtained. It is very strong, but also very unstable, and there is an indescribable evil nature to it. Ling Han knew that Hong Tian's steps had always been exploring various historical sites, and this should be an opportunity that he had obtained. But second baby also said that it was filled with evil nature, so he did not know if this was a good thing or a bad thing for Hong Tian's steps. While they were talking, an hour passed by quietly. Hong Tian's steps, let's fight. Luo Jintang said loudly. After such a long time, not only did he adjust his body's condition, he also adjusted his mentality. So what if it was Hong Tian's steps? Today he would destroy his legend. Hong Tian's steps was incomparably calm, and said faintly, okay. Hong, starlight flashed on his body. This was his opened aperture, and it resonated with heaven and earth. I am at the opening realm, I will seal myself to inscription patterns. As he spoke, the starlight on his body immediately dimmed. Luo Jintang's expression changed, and waves appeared on his face. Phone reading is more refreshing. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.